Two guys of Minnesota sports flowing in their veins. Mackey and Judd on Score North and ScoreNorth.com.
Yeah, Justin came out strong, really well actually. We had him in yesterday, and he's he surprisingly, he did take some shots in that game, and once again, I think it was about the 5th or 6th week in a row he took a type of hit that drew a flag. Clearly there's an emphasis on the teams we're playing that some of those hits they don't just seem to be by accident at times, but Justin came out great. He should be good throughout the week.
Interesting comments from who should be the NFL's coach of the year. I saw someone put out a list that was like, was it Schrags? It might have been Schrags.
Yes, it was Schrags. I saw it yesterday. I didn't like it at all.
3 non-Kevin O'Connell coaches for his finalists as coach of the year.
Yeah.
I think I almost feel like whether it's NFL Network will touch on the Vikings a little bit because they make an effort to like touch on all the teams as much as they can because it's the legal network. But ESPN, Fox Sports 1 has a bunch of talking head shows, and I flip around sometimes just to kind of see like what are they saying. I can't remember the last time they talked about the Vikings. For like 3 minutes, they'll talk about, Kirk Cousins and the comeback and stuff, but they basically act like the Vikings don't exist when talking about playoff contenders and Super Bowl MVP, Coach of the Year, Giants, Cowboys, Chiefs, Bills. No Vikings. No love.
Kyle Brandt loves Kirk, and that's one of the few national talking heads who I feel like is pretty obsessed with the Vikings.
Yeah.
Beyond that, though, and you know what? It's probably because the Vikings aren't seen as a sexy team. Like the Cowboys will always be the Cowboys, right? And the New York teams and the East Coast teams are going to get more attention. But I was not to have Kevin O'Connell in your top 3. I mean, I'm not even coming at this from a biased standpoint of being in town here. Not to have him in your top 3. Come on.
Yeah, it's kind of. I guess you're just chalking it all up to luck. Like anyone could have just like coached this Vikings team to 11 wins. We will get to your pecking order and also our friend, the biggest Vikings fan we know, Randy in Cottage Grove with a stud stable later. But you have a Kevin O'Connell themed pecking order we're going to get to. But just off his comments there to start the show here, what did you make of that? Because I hadn't put a ton of thought into it until the last couple games. Like JJ has taken some big borderline to not even borderline bad hits. Penalized hits.
Yep.
Does it feel like it's just it's happenstance? The guy's getting targeted like targeted by Kirk throws 12, 15, 16 times a game, and so he's just more susceptible because he's got the ball all the time. Or do you think defense is much like the Bounty Gate Saints with Brett Favre back in the day have said, you know what? If we're going to beat this team, we have to take out the best weapon in the NFL. What do you make of his interpretation of these hits?
Well, I think there's multiple things at work here. And first of all, I would like to congratulate KOC because that is a marvelous, marvelous working of the system. Again, proving how smart this guy is to unsolicited take a question about Jefferson and go where he went because it essentially, and it's not that Justin hasn't already drawn flags. He has, but I love putting it out there because that's now going to put the league, of course, on notice a little bit more of, hey, my guy is being illegally hit. Now, first of all, I would like to say this. Yes, the hits are questionable at times, but I give Jefferson a ton of credit because here's the thing. How many receivers who are as good as he is in this era of football, so I'm not talking about the 90s, early 2000s, run the routes and make the catches that he does? He's putting himself in a position to get smacked. There's a lot of receivers who are like, I ain't doing that. The fact that he holds onto the football almost every time is ridiculous. And yes, I feel like some of the hits are very borderline now. I also feel like, though, that they are putting him in position, and he is himself, to make catches that there's no question about it, leave him vulnerable to those hits. But I love the head coach putting it out there now of saying, that doesn't seem to be right, because this league should do everything in their power. If they right now try and protect quarterbacks as much as possible, and I don't blame them for that, okay? But this league does not want to lose Justin Jefferson to a fractured shoulder, Like, that's not going to do them good. Hey, you know what? Coming up next, a divisional round playoff game is the KJ Osborne and Adam Thielen-led Vikings coming up on NBC. We're going to see the second and third receivers on the depth chart because Justin Jefferson's arm is in a sling.
Find out if Jalen Reagor can run the right route.
Exactly.
Next on NBC.
So I give O'Connell credit because he didn't do it in a pissed off way. Like, it wasn't a attacking way at all.
Yeah.
But I love how he put that out there. And again, as a fan of football, I do not want to see guys like that get hurt. And I guess my question is this: because there was a time where the hits that Justin is taking were standard operating procedure. Like, yeah, it got blown up. But could they do even more to protect him? Probably. And would I like to see that as a fan of football? Yes. So I think if you put this whole thing together, what we have seen is Justin Jefferson being unfairly targeted? Probably not. Is he taking some hits that appear dangerous? Absolutely. Do I love the fact that his coach is in a very smart way basically going to bat for him? Yes. I think it again shows how well O'Connell can play the system.
Yeah, so we got 3 games left, and Justin Jefferson has 111 catches, 1,623 yards, and teams are double covering him, bracket covering him, safety over the top help. Sometimes if you've got a good enough cornerback, just putting one of the best cornerbacks on the league on him, shadowing him for chunks of the game. And then this next level of taking gray area shots at him because, what's the worst that can happen? They're probably not going to throw you out. Like Gilmore had the one hit, right? It was kind of under the chin. Yeah. In college, that's a targeting, and he's out of the game. In the NFL, it's a 15-yard penalty, but maybe it rattled his cage and sent a message for the rest of the game and makes him run some bad routes or something. Like, it's worth it to try it in the NFL. It might be if it's early enough and you got a lead or something too, you can give up the 15 yards.
Though. You can get tossed.
Not as easily as in college, though, right?
No, but I mean, you can be tossed, and that's where I love O'Connell gaming the system.
Just throwing it out. It's a very Phil Jackson thing to kind of not freak out in the moment, but to in the press conference say, "Hey, here's a point of emphasis that I think everyone should take a look at." And then, lo and behold, those Lakers teams. Of course, it's a Lakers team, and like if Phil Jackson says anything at a post-game press conference in the late '90s, and like the next game, it's like Kobe gets to the free throw line 27 times.
Yep.
So I do like the gamesmanship by Kevin O'Connell. I think it's even more impressive the numbers that Justin Jefferson's putting up with all of the coverage attention that he's getting by defenses and the big hits, and he just pops up after all of them. I mean, he was down. He had like a chest contusion, and he went out for a little bit, but he comes right back in, and he was a huge reason why they came back in the fourth quarter. So it's been impressive and more impressive because they're hunting him with borderline hits.
So, and I don't watch all the games because we do ordinarily just pay all of our attention to the Vikings games. But I got a question off of that. In this day and age, how many absolute star receivers, Cooper Kupp probably qualifies, run those routes? Like he is leaving himself open to be clocked, and he is. But I mean, I just go back to the amount of routes I see from Justin Jefferson comparables. And it feels like, yes, they make great catches and tough catches, but those routes are I think quintessential in his prime Chris Carter routes.
Well, so the routes
right?
that you're most susceptible to take big hits are those intermediate routes, like the short ones. It's you get the ball and you can kind of dictate contact.
Yep.
The long ones that are 20, 30, 40, like 40 yards down the field, those are more just like one-on-one. You're not always, there might be a safety coming over the top sometimes on those, but it's the intermediate stuff, 15, 20, 25, where it's highly trafficked. There's linebackers within striking distance. There's safeties. There's cornerbacks. And he leads the league in catches in the intermediate. I think Tyreek Hill might now, but it's like him and Tyreek Hill lead the league in those intermediate ranges. I mean, that's the area where you have to have your head on a swivel, even in today's softer version of the NFL. Let's get into Judd's pecking order here. We like to rank things on Tuesdays on Mackey and Judd. And this week, Judd is going to give you the best first-year head coaching performances in Vikings history based on his vision for this. And this pecking order is presented by our friends over at Livia. Speaking of vision, if you have a vision to lose some weight, you don't have to wait until January like everyone else does. You can get started now.
Exactly right. And guess what, too? Here is the great news, 50% off. If you get started now, you get 50% off. Now, a year plus ago, I started on the program. I dropped 40 pounds. And the best part, Livia helps you keep the weight off. So we're talking about you lose the weight, but it's not a diet plan. It's a lifestyle change, and it's a positive one. Weight control, okay? So you drop the weight and you keep that off. Imagine by springtime, March hits, right? All those clothes in your closet that didn't fit or don't fit right now, and it's frustrating, they fit. Guess why? Because this program works. It's fantastic. And again, 50% off. 855-GO-LIVEA, 855-GO-LIVEA, Livia.com, Livia Weight Control Centers, Livia.com. That is how you get a start on a new you in the new year, 50% off. Check them out. And if you're in town here, you can certainly go to one of their centers. If you're not, virtual visits are an option, so you do not have to be in state to join. Check them out, Livia.com.
Hey, if you're looking for something fun to do during this holiday week, TommySports.com. You can get $15 tickets to see NDSU and St. Thomas Division I hoops action. $15 tickets. Bring some friends, bring some family, have a good time. TommySports.com to get your tickets as the Tommies battle North Dakota State on Wednesday night. All right, it's pecking order time. The best first-year head coaching jobs in Vikings history, according to Judd.
Okay. I'm going to start at the top here. And here were to make this a little bit more fun, the parameters were this. The first year is incredibly important, okay? But I also took into the magnitude of what that set up. So it wasn't just, well, this guy got off to a terrible start and screw him. And it's 10 coaches. I'm going to start at the top, 1 through 10. All right. We start with the guy that I declared yesterday now to be the best first-year coach in Vikings history, started in 1961, which is KOC. 11-3, division title, story yet to be written, but he is the first coach in the history of this team to step in and win a division, and he's only the third coach among the 10 to step in and have a winning record. KOC has done a fantastic job, so I put him 1.
Yeah, like he's laid such amazing groundwork, and we don't know what the story is going to be. Who knows? Like, do they flop in year 2? But it doesn't feel fluky. I think after some of the other first-year Vikings head coaches, like Leslie Frazier, Brad Childress, they didn't have the wins and losses success that KOC had, but just personality-wise and demeanor-wise, I think you were still sizing some of these guys up. Like, does this guy feel like a head coach? Are the players buying what he's selling? I don't know. I need to see another year. I did feel like after Mike Zimmer went 7-9, they won some games late and they finished 7-9, and it did feel like, okay, he's definitely a defensive coordinator on steroids, but the team is buying in, and he's so great at defense that this thing is going to click to some extent. KOC feels like a guy that players are following. These post-game locker room speeches, everyone's just lean in, everyone is like ready to explode. It feels like he has that front of the room personality that people buy into, regardless of what the win-loss record is.
Absolutely. I also feel like we are not probably discussing enough the KOC impact on Kirk. And that's the thing is, Brad stepped in as a Reed disciple, and he stepped in as, if you recall, a quarterback whisperer, right? He had worked with McNabb, and we gave him a lot of credit for that. And he got here, and I didn't really help there. Didn't really help there a lot. Kevin O'Connell has, if you had a list right now, 5 reasons why Kevin was hired. Number 1, public or not, was Kirk Cousins. He can get the most from Kirk. He has delivered on that. Mm-hmm. Again, don't care what the stats are. I care what the wins are. I care what the clutch gene is. Kevin O'Connell is 1. Number 2 is a guy who also in his first year as the Vikings coach won 11 games, did not win a division title. Dennis Green, 92. He would go on to, so the Vikings were a wild card 11 wins, 5 defeats, lost in the first round in the playoffs to Washington at the time. He would go on to miss the playoffs only twice in 10 years. It didn't end well, but he is still, in my opinion, overall, right now, the second best coach in the history of the franchise. Dennis Green got this. Dennis Green.
So you have Bud Grant third then, huh? KOC, I'm assuming, is the greatest coach in Vikings history after what we're seeing this year.
Yeah,
Disrespect
exactly right.
to Bud Grant.
Exactly right. Bud Grant's an interesting one. This is why I like this list. It gets very controversial. It gets very tricky and controversial. But Dennis Green is the last coach to step in here as an offensive-minded guy and immediately instill confidence, because Brad certainly did not. So, Dennis, don't sell him short as a coach and a personnel guy. For a lot of years, he did a lot of good things.
Yeah.
So he's second on my list.
Yep. Well,
Yeah.
okay. Agreed.
Yeah.
All right. Number 3 on my list. This gets very controversial. So if you don't like controversy, get out of the kitchen now, because I'm about to turn the heat up.
Wow. Here it
Because
comes.
Bud Grant is not third on this list. Jerry Burns is.
Oh, Burnsy.
I love it. That effing guy. Jerry Burns takes over for Bud Grant after Bud's 1 year back in 85 and goes 9-7, and then takes the Vikings to the playoffs 87 through 89. He is a guy who took this team to the first, I believe, of the heartbreak NFC Championship games was Burnsy in Washington on the Wade Wilson to Darren Nelson drop. Not a great throw. We can debate that. But he came in and got immediate results. And then, much like Zim with Cousins, this is where it's intriguing on Burnsy. Mike Lynn trades for Herschel Walker. Well, Herschel is Mr. North-South. Burnsy is a West Coast guy. And immediately, things get worse, because now you're trying to feature a guy that Burnsy didn't want. Okay? So Jerry Burns, it's a short run here, but actually when he was really coaching this team and employing what he wanted, was pretty successful. So Jerry Burns is number 3.
Burnsy's one of the greatest personalities. Is it like his personality as a head coach could not exist today? You couldn't just get up there all rough around the edges and swear for a half hour in front of the cameras at the podium.
The fans' effers. You'd be fired instantly.
I know. It's hilarious. Which current head coach is most likely to call fans MFers after an angry press conference?
Ooh, current?
That's actually a good one.
I mean, if he got
Belichick?
riled up, no, Bill would never tip his hand like that.
But I could see him just like very. I want to say it so bad in Belichick voice, and we can't because we're a friendly show. But I could see him doing it.
I think if he got upset enough, Dan Campbell.
Oh, there we go.
Because he'd lose his mind.
Yeah, because he lacks. There's a lack of emotional intelligence there, maybe that
there's
some other coaches have.
I think there's a switch that if it gets flipped on, it's over.
I could see Cliff Kingsbury going like, Peter at the office, lighting everything on fire on his way out, going to some like bottom of the barrel Power 5 college coaching job and just
pushing the partition down.
Two middle fingers with his loafers and no socks.
Sticking his feet up on his desk, kicking back with his fish. Okay.
Yeah.
So Burnsy is number 3. Number 4, Bud Grant. Here's where it's interesting. So Bud comes from the Winnipeg Blue Bombers of the CFL in 67.
That's right.
Replaces Van Brocklin and proceeds to go 3-8-3. So
okay, so time out.
Yep.
These idiots on the broadcast that kept saying like, if this game ends in a tie, or people on Twitter, like NFL reporters, it'll be the first time a team is tied twice in the same season.
Super Bowl,
or there was a different
Super Bowl era. I bet that's what it is.
What game was that?
1970. The merger.
Okay.
That's
just want to be clear on that. I knew the Vikings tied 2 or 3 times in the season.
In 67, but the AFL NFL merger, I think, is circa 1970, and I think that's where they start the record keeping.
Just want to be clear about that.
Bud Grant, 3-8-3. They finished last in the division at the time, but they then followed that up with 10 division titles in the next 11 seasons and 4 Super Bowl appearances. Now, Bud did go 10-12 in the playoffs, but of course, again, that includes 4 losses in a game in which the Vikings have not been back to since Bud left here. But Bud is 4, because he laid the groundwork for greatness, but certainly didn't have the immediate impact of a guy like KOC. Now he did inherit a roster that had just traded Tarkington, so there are some circumstances there that make it more difficult, but I put him 4.
Okay.
Number 5, Mike Zimmer. He goes 7-9, and the Vikings finish 3rd in the North in 14. But then they draft Teddy. They start to shore up the defense even more, and the Vikings go 11-5 in Zim's second year, and they win the division title, one of, I believe, 2 that he won as head coach. And he then leads the Vikings to the playoffs only actually 3 times in 8 years. Zimmer laid a good foundation. It didn't necessarily have the playoff success. So I put him behind Grant, but I still felt like, to your point from before, Phil, that he definitely had an impact, and he took a team that was lost defensively, just absolutely awful, and pretty quickly turned the defense around, which is, in his case, much like KLC with the offense, that's what he was paid to do.
Yeah, I love the job Zim did in his first year, because it kind of shined a light on, oh my God, you can just come in here with a different attitude and a different scheme and coach some of these young guys up, and the defense can go from 32nd to like mid-pack, and then we saw the next jump into the playoff season the next year, and then so he laid a lot of great groundwork.
Yes, absolutely. All right, second half of the list. Brad Childress, number 6.
Brad.
He goes 6-10 in 2006, but don't forget that team was not a bad team. And through October, until that infamous Patriots game on Halloween night at the Metrodome, this team was tracking to be really pretty good.
Yeah, then they lost all but 2 games the rest of the way.
Exactly right.
Yeah,
they fall apart. They come back in 2007 and go 8-8, and then of course the next couple years are solid. A 10-6 2008 in which they qualified for the playoffs, and 12-4 in 2009 with the run to the conference championship game before 2010. Brad Childress, not a terrible job, but definitely a second half of the list guy.
Yeah,
I think that's fair.
I think that's he laid some okay groundwork. Really, Brett Favre coached that team at their peak, yes. And Brad Childress was a little more along for the ride. Although I think generally Brad Childress is too much of a punchline in Vikings history. He did some good things. They won a couple divisions. They went to an NFC title game, and he was the head coach.
A better personnel.
I stand for Brad Childress.
A better personnel guy than a coach, but unfortunately, beyond Brett, which was essentially thrown in Brad's lap, he couldn't find a quarterback. All right, last part of the list. Mike Tice is next. So his first full year was he replaced Green for the last 1 or 2 games of that 2001, and then first full year in 2002 he goes 6-10. All right, he actually had 2 winning seasons in his next 3 years, but only made the playoffs after the 8-8 year in 2004. Tice was not well paid. His coaching staff was far too small, and he was destined to be fired as soon as Red essentially sold that team. I think Tice, to your Childress point, Phil, I think sometimes Ticey, probably for what he was given, is too much of a punchline. Like Mike Tice, for what he was given and the circumstances,
a very good job.
Did not do a terrible job. And I think we're like, it's Ticey, and Ticey was funny, and he was a character. But yes, I think for what Mike Tice had and the circumstances, and he took over in a really bad year and situation, probably should get a bit more credit.
He was told to go on one of those cooking shows where, all right, you're going to compete against 3 other chefs, and we're going to give you all different ingredients to make a 5-star gourmet meal. And he was given a stick of bubble gum, a box of ice, and some Salisbury steaks, basically. And he went to the playoffs once. All right. Let's fly through here. We got our
9,
Vikings
8, 9,
fan
10.
Randy waiting here.
8, Les Frazier. First year, 3-13, and a franchise record minus 109 point differential.
But not even the worst Vikings coach named Les.
No, he's not.
That's my pecking order next week. Vikings coaches named Les.
That'll be a good one. That'll be very, very quick. Number nine is Norm Van Brocklin, who took over now the expansion Vikings. Actually won his first game ever against the Chicago Bears at the Met. He beat Papa George Halas 37-13, but he goes 3-11 in 1961 and leaves with a 29-51-4 mark. No playoff games. He is ninth, but what holds Norm Van Brocklin out of the 10th and final position is the year of Les Steckel, 3-13 in 84, after replacing Bud, who had gone 8-8. And I stand corrected. Actually, the franchise worst point differential was that year in 84 when the Vikings were a minus 208. 208 in point differential. It was so bad that Bud agreed to return in 85 as long as Bernsey got the job in 86. So Les Steckel actually took a team that shouldn't have been terrible and went 3-13. Congratulations, Les Steckel.
So for any future men named Les, do not apply for the Vikings head coaching job whenever it comes open.
Poor Les Frazier too. Such a good man. What a great guy.
He was, and he should get another shot. I don't know if he's going to nail it, but with what they've done in Buffalo, he deserves another shot to be a head coach and turn around a program somewhere. So there it is, Judd's best first-year head coaching jobs in Vikings history. Yes. We like to rank things on the show. We're going to pause and go find our friend, the most passionate Vikings fan we know, Randy in Cottage Grove, a little stud stable